speaker meeting, and we just happen to have Scott R. from Sherman Oaks, California here, so I don't think I'll spend any more time up here than is necessary. He's from the earthquake capital of California. Scott R.
My name's Scott. I'm an alcoholic. Hi, everybody. I'd like to thank the committee for having us up, and I'd like to thank everybody who has worked on this roundup. I'd like to thank all the speakers we've heard so far and will hear. And I'd like to welcome the newcomers to Alcoholics Anonymous. I have a great life, and I'm sure that thrills the hell out of you. Because I know when I was new, I was just so happy for the people who were having a good life. I was so happy for them. I'd sit and I'd listen to them talk about their new car and their new house, and I'd sit and I'd grit and I'd think, geez, wouldn't it be terrible if you went home to that new house tonight and it blew up? You know? And your new family blew up, and you blew up. I was a happy-go-lucky guy when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous. I want to thank, and I would ask you to indulge me for 1 minute to thank my wife, Nancy, for being with me here tonight. Miracle. And another real special thing for us is you gave us an opportunity to spend some time with our friends Milton and Ruby Morrell, who some of you know, and who were a big part of our recovery, have always been a big part of our recovery, who gave us family recovery, and have been two of our spiritual guides in Alcoholics Anonymous. If you're new here and you're anything like me tonight, you're sitting in this room and you're looking around this room and you're saying to yourself, Alcoholics Anonymous, how lame is this? How did I wind up in Alcoholics Anonymous? This is beyond lame. This is lamer than church, lamer than synagogue. This is some plateau of lameness I never imagined was available to me. Alcoholics Anonymous. Welcome. Yeah, you're with the lames now, pal. If you're bored, if you're new here and you're bored, I'd like you to tell you my favorite story about being bored in AA. If you're new here. This happened to a friend of mine, a guy from my old home group in Southern California, a guy named Jeff, and he was brand new and he was shifting around in his seat at a meeting. And his sponsor said, "What's the matter?" And Jeff said, "I'm bored." And his sponsor said, "Well, you know why you're bored?" He said, "No." His sponsor said, "You're bored because you're boring. That's why you're bored." And it nailed him. It was like an acid moment. He went, wow. It was like, what a great thing. It blew him away, and he said to himself, man, I can hardly wait to tell that to a newcomer. What a great thing to say to a newcomer. Yeah? 13 years later, he's 13 years sober. No newcomer has ever told him that they're bored. He's at a meeting, he's there with a young lady, she's new, she's shifting around in her seat, and Jeff says, "What's the matter?" She says, "I'm bored." He says, "Well, you know why you're bored." She said, "Yeah, 'cause I'm with you." So I'd like to welcome you to AA. If you're new here, I hope you're out of plans. If you do have a plan, it's probably a beaut. Don't use your plan. We want to hear your plan. Grab one of us after the meeting and tell the plan to us. But please don't use your plan. That's actually the book I've always wanted to see, is the collection of newcomer plans. Man. I was on the phone with a new guy a couple of weeks ago, and he had a couple of weeks, and then he was on the phone. He talked to I really didn't know him, and he talked for about an hour. I said, 4 times so he'd know I wasn't dead. Not that he wouldn't have minded if I was dead. And at the end of the talk, and he's talking about how he was stalking a couple of women, but everything's different now. He's a couple of weeks sober. He doesn't do that anymore. And at the end, he says, I feel so all alone. Oh, what a terrible thing that is, right? I said, well, I hardly know you, and I just listened to you for an hour without interrupting you. He said, I mean, I don't have a woman. I said, well, what would you be bringing to a relationship right now besides stalking skills? Our problem mainly rests in our minds. People who are in remission from leukemia are not having dating problems. They're not. They're just concerned about their hair growing back, man. And yet a man with 14 days of sobriety, 14 days in remission from a disease that's killing hundreds of thousands of people globally, his main problem, or so he thinks, is his lack of female companionship. It's an extraordinary thing. I haven't been to Vancouver since 1970. I was here in 1970, and Ruby and Milton were driving Nancy and I in from the airport, and we passed, and I haven't been here in 23, 4 years, and I said, and I saw this place, from the highway, and I went, that's a great place. That's where we were when I was here. And Ruby went, yeah, that's Skid Row is what that is. And I remember it as the place, that you went to, and it was warm, and it was a nice place, and that was the deal there. I was brought up in the Bronx in New York City to a completely insane family. My family was completely out of their minds. My wife never believed me about my family until she met them. My mother threw an engagement party for us, and my aunt wore her wig backwards, and it had a bun on it. Oh, man. And it wasn't a mistake. It was a look she was going after. She knew it. She was even wearing it kind of like a beret, a little askew. Now, anything you got in my family for free meant it was stolen. And her husband was a welder and used to get bales of free steel wool. So she took a decorating course, made throw pillows, and filled all the throw pillows in the house with the steel wool. So now that stuff works its way through on you after a while. So when you'd be in their house, everybody was moving up and down and moving, and the whole room was very kinetic. It was a lot of movement all the time. Absolutely out of their minds. I was not an alcoholic when I got here. If you're new here and you're not an alcoholic, welcome to Alcoholics Anonymous. And one of the reasons is I was brought up Jewish. And Jews don't drink because it might dull the pain. Yeah, you don't want that to happen. Don't want to miss out on any misery opportunities. So that's what I was taught, and my uncle was one of the top 10 welterweights of the world. He was a fighter, and he was concerned about anti-Semitism. It was 1939. He was going to fight down in Atlanta, Georgia. And he changed his name from Izzy Redmond to Izzy Goldberg so no one would know he was Jewish. I wish I was lying about this. This is my genetic pool, folks. This is not something you brag about in the schoolyard. They were absolutely insane, and they did not have one single solitary thing to do with making me an alcoholic. Not one thing to do with me. I'm not saying they weren't difficult. I'm not saying that damage wasn't done that needed to be undone. I'm not saying a lot of work didn't need to be done. But if they made me an alcoholic, I could go to therapy and work out my family problems and then drink properly. I wouldn't have to go to parties and say, no heroin for me, I'll have a Perrier. All right? I wouldn't have to do that anymore. But no amount of therapy, no amount of working on those problems will make me anything but what I am, which is an alcoholic. Many people have difficult families, but they don't shoot a quarter grain of heroin in their hip when they get anxious. I took a lot of drugs, and my sponsor explained to me early on, he said, look, Scott, I said, I don't know, am I a drug addict, am I an alcoholic, am I a dessert topping, a floor wax, what am I, what am I? And Don said, look, I don't care what you took, all right? I just don't care what you took. Let's go to the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous and find out if you have alcoholism. Now, I got up here, I said, I'm Scott, my name's Scott, and I'm an alcoholic. That is what I am. I am not well, it's just for me. It's just me. If for me to say I'm an alcoholic and a drug addict, my name's Scott, I have a disease. And this is just for me. People who say drug addict and alcoholic, believe me, I am not judging you at all. This is just what I had to do because I wanted out of here because I was a drug addict. You know? And Don said, look, I'm going to tell you what the difference is, and we'll move on here. He said, look, Scott, an alcoholic will steal your money, go downtown, spend the money to get loaded, get drunk, come back full of self-pity, crying, and tell you what he did. He said a drug addict will steal your money, go downtown, use the money to get loaded, come back, and help you look for the money. Now, I had done both, right? So I was going to stick around. And I grew up in this insane family in the Bronx, and when I was a kid, I really thought my dad was a loser, and my dad felt like he was a loser. He had really felt bad about himself, and I completely agreed with his assessment of himself. And my father, my brother and I never missed a meal. My father never made more than $10,000 a year. He was a bartender. He brought his pay home every week. He was not an alcoholic. My brother and I never missed a meal and never went to school with ripped clothing. My last year out there, I made $80,000. My children did miss meals and did go to school with ripped clothing. How had my father become a loser? Put the pictures down right next to each other. How had my father become a loser? My father had become a loser because a certain kind of thinking had become established in me that had placed me beyond human help. Always good news for the new man. You're beyond human help. Thrilled me. And I set some lofty goals for myself as a young man growing up in the Bronx, and I reached or surpassed them all by the time I got to Alcoholics Anonymous. By the time I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, I had a book on the bestseller list. I had acted in a Broadway play. I had directed a movie. I directed a TV show. I had my own theater in New York. I had done all of these things a time. I never got to do any of them more than once because when I'd leave, they'd move the business so I couldn't find it again. And the reason why was people were horrible to me. If you're new here, you know what I'm talking about. Horrible to me. If you're new here tonight and people are thinking behind your back, I want to welcome you to Alcoholics Anonymous. There ain't nobody in this room that can take your seat away if people are thinking behind your back. Now, early on, they just do stuff behind your back. A little later on, they get tricky, and they start talking behind your back, and then the real smart ones start thinking about behind your back. Later, it's hard to catch them. You have to accuse them of it all the time. And by the time I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, I was in psychotherapy for 18 years. I was on the brink of being a very well-analyzed corpse by the time I got to Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm not putting therapy down. Therapy's great stuff. The Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous on page 133 says if you need a doctor, go get one. It does say so after the steps are described. In the description of step 5, it says, no wonder those in the medical profession have such a low opinion of our chances for recovery because we seldom told them the truth or allowed them to be of any use to us. So, and also, if you do see a therapist, you might want to see one who understands alcoholism. Otherwise, it's kind of going to a doctor for a broken leg and having the doctor say, geez, I've always wanted to see one of those. What the hell do you do with that, you know? But I thought that self-knowledge and I thought that the treatment that was offered to me in therapy was a treatment for my alcoholism, and it is baffling. It is baffling because I did good work in therapy and I was dying. I was doing all the things they told me to do in terms of gaining self-knowledge and using that self-knowledge as a bromide for my illness, and it was not working. Things just got progressively worse. My way of staying okay in therapy was I drank till I didn't want to be a drunk. I kicked the alcohol habit with marijuana. I triumphed over marijuana with cocaine. Cocaine's a good drug. It's good for sex if you enjoy sex from the Neolithic period. I was victorious over cocaine with heroin. Heroin's a good drug. It starts out kind of adventurous and artistic, and then you become a vomiting pig. It's this good little leap you make. And then I drank till I didn't want to be a drunk, and I swapped addictions and stayed in psychotherapy and continued to get arrested as a young man in the Bronx, and my family became very, very sick from prolonged exposure to me. My mother became an insane, sick Al-Anon, and I was in a cycle of using hypodermics. This is an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, but again, I've been asked to share my story, so I'll do that. And my father had a massive stroke, and I had injected some drugs, and I was loaded the night that he died. And I couldn't be there for my father, for my mother, or my brother. I felt like a pig. I had holes in my arms. I was something less than human. The curtain was down, and I couldn't be there for him. And every time the heart machine went off, it couldn't even get through, and I knew it. I knew that I had failed in one of the most important tasks that a son can ever have in life. No matter all the excuses that I made, you see, I had already begun to rearrange my life to accommodate alcoholism. You must. Eventually, if you're a practicing alcoholic long enough, you will rearrange every area of your life to accommodate the disease. Because I did whatever alcoholism told me to do for exactly how long it told me to do it, whenever it told me to do it. But I was free, right? Whenever it told me to do it for just exactly how long it wanted me to. Our book says we are driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity. Driven is not nudged. It's not influenced. It implies under the lash of, in slavery to. I was driven. And I swore I would never put a needle in my arm again, and I didn't. Just after this period of time, I met a remarkable woman. An extraordinary woman, a beautiful woman. She was exotic. You know, I was from the Bronx, and she was from Detroit. Just remarkable, you know. She was everything I wasn't that I wanted to be. In a lot of ways, she didn't seem to have this weight around her. She seemed carefree in a really loving, lovely way. And I was acting in a Broadway play, playing a greaser, you know, on a Broadway play, and she was an usherette in the theater, and it was very romantic, and I just adored this woman. If you took everything I did in 8 years of marriage and wrote it down in a book and gave it to this very intelligent, very sensible woman, and she read everything I did in 8 years of marriage, and you would say, would you live with this? No, who would live with this? What reasonable human being would live with this? But you spread it out over 8 years, throw in a best-selling book, throw in chronic success, throw in the fact that when I started the walk to the drink, quite often I was telling the truth. Got a little murky over here. And by the time I got to the drink, it was an out-and-out lie. But quite often it was the truth over here. You know. And yeah, you'd live with it. It'll chip away at you. And Nancy and I became very, very sick together. We became so ill together. A guy lent us his car, and we sold his car. We sold the guy's car. I'll never forget this guy's voice on the phone. You sold my car? I lent you my car. How could you sell my car? 15 years later, when I called this guy to make amends, his voice was exactly the same. He said, "You're paying me back?" It was like he was frozen at the end of the phone, you know? Man. And Dr. Silkworth says the alcoholic life becomes the only normal one. I said to Nancy, I said, "Honey, I'm sick of acting like a kid. I'm sick of borrowing money. Let's do the right thing. Let's stand on our own 2 feet. Let's sell the car." And she looked at me with tears in her eyes, you know? Yes, sweetheart. I mean, the alcoholic life becomes the only normal one. I came home one day, we had these big iced tea glasses, and I popped the cork on a bottle of wine and emptied the entire bottle of wine into this glass. And I look up, and I'm getting the rat face. I said, "What?" She said, what are you doing? And completely seriously, I looked this woman in the eyes and I said, "I'm having a glass of wine." Can't a man have a glass of wine in his own home? I was working in the restaurant business for a while in New York, and I wasn't going to let them take advantage of me and pay me an honest day's pay for an honest day's work and play me like a sap like they did with my dad. So I stole a large quantity of money, and Nancy and I went on a belated honeymoon to Italy. Now, when you're an employer and a guy, one of your kitchen help, is all of a sudden taking jet planes to Italy, you got to know something's going on, you know. And we were on a lake in the Italian Alps in a medieval village. And they made cognac right there, right in that mountain range, so it was a couple of bucks a fifth, you know. And I'm drinking a couple of bottles a day, and after dinner one night I drank an entire bottle of cognac, and I look up, and I'm getting the rat face one more time, you know. And I said, "What?" She said, what are you doing? And again, completely seriously, I said, "Honey, this is fresh cognac. They make this right here. This hasn't had the time to have the alcohol content that the stuff in the States has. It's fresh, it's new, they just made it, it's hot off the presses." And she threw her hands up and walked away and said, "What an idiot." And I looked after her and said, "What a moron." And we had 2 children, and the boys became very, very sick from alcoholism. By the time I got sober, our older child was making involuntary clicking noises with his throat that he couldn't stop making at times. His small motor skills were pretty much blown very, very messed up. He was almost just about functionally retarded. And fear ought to be classed with stealing. It seems to cause more trouble. The fabric of our lives is shot through with it, and how horribly true for the young people who are exposed to alcoholism. Because you see, I'm going to take the walk to the drink. I am always going to take the walk to the drink. I might not get there today. I might have to wait till tomorrow. I might not walk through you. I might walk around you. But I'm going to get there. And if I love you, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're my wife, my child, my career. It doesn't matter if I value you more than my own life. I am going to answer the call. And you're either going to turn to paper mache or you're going to get invisible. And I'm going to make it through. How much disappearing can a child bear? How many times can a child vanish? Can their needs, wants, and desires evaporate? How many times can that happen before the child believes what they're being taught, which is they're invisible? They don't matter. They're insubstantial. Children have such little ego strength to begin with. And when it is pounded into them on a daily basis, no matter what I say, it doesn't matter what I say. It just matters what I do. And the bike money will go to heroin. I won't be able to buy you the lunchbox that'll make you feel part of. And when I do give it to you, it'll be with such excitement and such accolades that it'll seem bizarre to even bring it to school. I won't be able to get you the clothes that'll let you feel part of, and if I do, it'll be done in a way where it still doesn't feel right. And suddenly the kid feels exactly like the alcoholic, alone in a crowd, like their flies open all the time. Not a part of. And you know what? They're not. They're right. Those feelings are not a lie because you are sick, because it has happened to you, because the tapeworm of alcoholism is eating you up from the inside and leaving you hollow. You know? And you've never lied to me. You never lied to me when I came here and you told me what was wrong with me and you told me what was wrong with my family and I saw a family in recovery. You never lied to me. So Nancy and I went on, becoming sicker and sicker together, and the careers came and went. And on April 22nd, 1985, I crossed a line that I swore I would never cross again. I put a hypodermic needle in my arm again, and I did the thing I swore I would never do again, that I hadn't done for 13 years. I just swapped addictions, watched my life dissolve like a bromo seltzer. And I called my therapist of record. It was my first Jungian therapist, which after I was to read the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, I was to find out how meaningful that was. Because Carl Jung actually played a rather significant role in the founding of Alcoholics Anonymous. Because Carl Jung did for the man who 12-stepped the man, who 12-stepped Bill Wilson, Carl Jung did for him exactly what that therapist did for me that morning. He said, Scott, there is absolutely nothing that can be done for you. I said, what? He said, there is nothing that can be done for you. The only thing I can suggest is you attend a meeting of Narcotics Anonymous, Alcoholics Anonymous, or we have you institutionalized. Now, why I attended that meeting and did not pick the mental institution, I have no idea. On most other mornings, I would have gladly chosen the mental institution. I mean, in the last few years, I was excited when I was told that I needed dental surgery. That's an uninterrupted source of drugs for a period of time. Normal people don't get excited when they're told they need dental surgery. Normal people don't go, dental surgery. They don't do that. They don't get a little shot of adrenaline at the prospect of dental surgery. If you're new here and you just nodded your head for dental surgery, man. I went to that first meeting. And Milton saw me. He saw me that week. I'll tell you what kind of trouble. You're going to have to excuse my language just for one shot here tonight. I was in this meeting a couple of days, and this man, Milton M., I didn't even know the guy. He walked up to me, I didn't know him, and whispered into my ear, I know you're full of shit. Then, eventually, his wife became my wife's sponsor, and I knew I was really in trouble. That's the kind of meeting this was. And I went to that first meeting, and I looked around, and I just said, Alcoholics Anonymous. How did I wind up in Alcoholics Anonymous? I'm a major guy, and I am in Alcoholics Anonymous. And they gave, man, if you're new here, you are now privy to an unending, unsolicited reservoir of information and advice. Because they're going to talk to you, man. I mean, they would get right up in my face, with one tooth with a cavity in it, Do I want what you've got? I think not. Man. I mean, I'm here. Isn't it bad enough that I'm here? In Alcoholics Anonymous, my life is over, and now I got to listen to this moron? I mean, it astounded me. I couldn't believe it. And I guess I stuck around because I was out of plans. But I hated you. I hated everything about it. And I stuck around. I kept going to meetings. I was about 6 months sober. And I was enjoying the gift of step none. I didn't know I was suffering from untreated alcoholism. I didn't know I was an alcoholic. I didn't know what an alcoholic was. Now, I find, if you're drinking, you're treating your alcoholism. Drinking works. It's a treatment. It works. It kills you, but it works. if you are not drinking and you are not using the program of action outlined in our book, and you're suffering from untreated alcoholism, man, I find it much less attractive in people who are not drinking, you know. And you could pick them out at the meetings. They usually have a vein pumping like a garden hose on their forehead, you know. A real happy lot. You can count all the tendons in their neck, you know. Friend of the newcomer. Man. I was about 6 months sober, and I was going insane. I was going insane, and, you know, my paycheck had been coming home, and Nancy had started to reach out to the Al-Anon family groups. And I just tell you, because I've been asked to tell my story, and so that's what I'm going to do. And I was sitting in Alcoholics Anonymous meetings, and I was hearing some people tell jokes about Al-Anon. And I found them very hurtful and very confusing. I'm not talking about good-natured jokes about Al-Anon. God knows we tell enough good-natured jokes about Al-Anon and enough good-natured jokes about Alcoholics Anonymous. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about mean jokes. And I was very proud of my wife for reaching out to Al-Anon. I knew that I was lucky because I was seeing what was happening to new guys whose families weren't reaching out. And I felt very proud of my wife. And I found them hurtful and confusing until I found out that people who were telling them had no functioning knowledge of the Al-Anon family groups or recovery in Al-Anon or anything about it. You know? So my wife was reaching out to Al-Anon, and she was starting to go over to, later on, started going over to Milton Ruby's house, and we started seeing what a sober family looked like. And the kids stopped being as scared, and Alcoholics Anonymous started rearing its head in my life just a little bit, and I asked a guy to sponsor me. I was 6 months sober. I am so, so fortunate that I stayed sober that long without guidance. You know, sometimes you hear guys go to meetings and they say, my sponsor told me to go to share at every meeting I go to. And I always say to myself, then why isn't he here listening to you? Why do we have to hear this? Why can't you just call him? Man. And I asked this guy to sponsor me, and he asked me over to his apartment, and that afternoon he addressed every problem I have ever had or ever will have. He didn't solve them, he addressed them that afternoon. He addressed my resentments against myself, or my resentments against you, my overwhelming fears, and my unsolvable sexual problems. He worked the first 3 steps with me, and he gave me instructions and an inventory. Now, you hear some people share, and I know it's true for them, that they mostly resented themselves. And I know that that is not true for me. I hated me, but I really hated you. I mean, I hated you so much more than I hated me, I can't even begin to tell you. I am not a suicide guy. I'm a homicide guy. I vastly prefer your death to mine any day of the week. And I always have. And I'm not putting the suicide people down. I'm really not. Have some water, please. I think it's kind of the flip side of the same coin in a way, you know? But that's just the way I've always gone. You know, I love when you're given instructions and inventory. My favorite thing is when a guy says, I have no resentments. Because then you get to start asking the questions, you know? Oh, you love everybody in your family. You loved everyone in school then, right? You're a friend of the clergy, right? And the cracks start appearing, and the guy's usually a bubbling cauldron of venom by the time he leaves the house. You see, that's one way for a new guy to keep us away. I got no resentments. Go talk to somebody who needs you. I don't have any. That's when a new guy says, drinking's the furthest thing from my mind. To which I usually reply, no, your mind is the furthest thing from your mind. Let me tell you why we're so unimpressed with that, if you're new. Let me tell you why. Not because we think you're lying. The big book of Alcoholics Anonymous does not say, you'll see it coming. It'll be on your mind. You'll think about it. The thought will get bigger. It'll get bigger. You'll see it in the distance. It'll come. Here it comes. It's getting bigger and... No, it doesn't say that. It says, boom, you're drunk. That's what it says. That's what it says. It says you have a strange mental twist, not good eyesight. It says you will think that putting whiskey in your milk is a good idea. You'll cross the threshold of the hotel and say a couple of cocktails would be nice with dinner. That's what it says. It says it over and over and over again. That you are answering a call beyond your power, beyond your understanding, beyond any human understanding. So if you're new here, that is why we are. I'm not saying you're lying. I'm saying I don't care. And there's a difference. Because I love you so much, I want you to stick around. This is just for me. If you're new, I feel that you are in an extremely dangerous situation. Because you want to get sober and do not yet have the tools that will be necessary to keep you sober. And I urge you to not take your position or your situation lightly. I don't. I don't take it lightly. You know. And you can't get sober without a spiritual awakening. Well, we know you haven't had it, but don't drink till you have it. It's that strange half-world, that strange netherworld of sobriety. And I asked this man to take me on this journey, and he did. He was a remarkable, remarkable man. I wanted what he had, and then unfortunately I found out how he got it. Oh, man, this guy just didn't say no to anybody. He was just in endless service. He was sponsoring Minnesota, you know. I mean, it was just constant. I couldn't, you know, it was exhausting to look at what he did, let alone do it, you know. And I hung with this guy, and I started doing what he did. And if you're uptight about being an AA robot, I suggest to you, let AA robot be a lofty goal. Become an AA robot and then reprogram yourself. But get the chops. Get the chops. And the only way to get the chops is to follow someone who's got them. And I did my fourth step in about 3 months. By the time I was 9 months sober, I came over with, and did my fifth step with my sponsor. I did 6 and 7 for the first time, which have kind of become my template for my working relationship with God. And then came time to make my amends list, to start step 8. The best reading of the 8th step I have ever heard in my life took place at my old home group. It was done by a guy with hospital plastic on his wrist. He was there with a hospital group. He had never read chapter 5 before. I will never forget him. I have never seen him since. His name was Nino. He had a heavy New York accent. He's reading chapter 5 for the first time at this men's group. He gets up to step 8 and he reads, "Made a list of all those we had harmed and we became willing to make amends to them all." Jesus Christ! And he looked out into this room as if to say, "Have you seen this? Do you know what's in here, man?" It was so beautiful. It was so pure. It was so gorgeous. It's all I saw when I saw the steps. It's all I saw. No, not those people, not that money. Not that money, man. I wouldn't have taken that much money. Not if I had known. Man. No. Not the car. Ugh. So if you're new here, don't worry about it. It's 8 steps from where you are. Don't worry about it. And it's not 8 that you have to worry about. It's 9. But that's 9 steps, right? That's even better. So came time to do that 8-step list, and I didn't want to put my dad down there. He's dead. There's no point in putting him down. There's nothing I can do about that. And my sponsor said, "Do you owe him an amends?" I said, "Absolutely." He said, "Put him down." I said, "But what am I going to do?" He said, "I don't know. Do your job in Alcoholics Anonymous. Maybe you'll find the service that's going to put you back in contact with your dad, because I couldn't even think about him. It was so painful and so horrifying to me. I couldn't even touch him. I didn't have him in my life. I didn't even want to tell his grandsons about him. It was too awful for me. And I put him down, and I started doing my job in Alcoholics Anonymous. My first year of sobriety, I had a great job, and I was writing scripts for a big movie studio, and then I got a job directing a situation comedy for a major studio and making tons of dough. Stiff-necked tonight. And I really started sponsoring guys for the first time, and I was about a year sober, and I was working on this situation comedy down in Los Angeles, and I didn't get a show. I didn't get a show, and I almost drank. And it scared the hell out of me, because I thought I had a big God in my life, but show business was still my God, you know. And I sat down and I wrote a 10-step about this, my resentment against myself and the industry and stuff. And my AA family, it's not right or wrong, it's just the way we do it. We write out our 10 steps the same way we write out a fourth. It's just the way I've been taught, and it seems to help us out. So I did the inventory, and my sponsor suggested that I talk to God and ask him what I was going to have to do to stay sober. And I did. And I said, Father, you can have this too. You can have show business too. It's yours. I'm willing to do anything. Just please keep me sober. I will do anything. And within 3 months, I was cooking on a catering truck. And I looked up to God and I said, I didn't mean this. I didn't mean this. We've had a grotesque misunderstanding. And now in Los Angeles, there's a certain kind of catering you can make a lot of money on, and it's on-location catering for TV and films. When there's a film or a TV shoot, you take a catering truck out there and you feed the cast and crew. It's a Teamsters job, which is kind of like breaking a racketeering law. And you sorry to all the brothers in the and you make a lot of dough. And I got a job doing this. And my first movie that I catered, the executive producer and star of the movie was a guy who I had worked with in the business. And he stuck his head on the kitchen truck that morning, and he said, can I have a burrito, Scott? And I turned around and I said, what's happening, man? He said, well, is this your truck? I said, no, but it's my spatula. Well, I called my sponsor and I said, yeah, we're getting a gift now, pal. Yeah, I expected a miracle, buddy. We're getting the gift of sobriety now. Man. He said, sounds like you've got a resentment. They're brilliant, aren't they? Geniuses. I sat down and I wrote, I am resentful at Scott for working on a kitchen truck. It affects my self-esteem, pocketbook, ambition, personal relations, and sex. A 5-bagger for sure. If you're new here, I don't expect you to remember this. I'm sharing with you the spiritual solution I've been offered in Alcoholics Anonymous. And it's done many, many different ways by different AA families. This is the way I've been taught to do it, and I'm going to share with you how I have been taught to help God intervene in my life. Because I can talk to God all I want, and if I'm talking to Him through a room filled with crap, His voice sounds like this. I can't understand Him. Now, what's blocking me from God? I'm an alcoholic. Resentment's no big deal. It's only the great destroyer of all alcoholics, the source of all spiritual illness. It'll cut you off from the sunlight of the Spirit, take your ass out and kill you dead, but don't be alarmed. No big thing. What's blocking me? What am I going to ask God to take away? I go to Him in step 6 and 7. I say, Father, please remove what? What? The truck? The burrito? You know, what am I going to ask God to remove? What's killing me? It's killing me. I'm going to die. What? I'm grandiose. How dare a man of my caliber be working, making an honest day's pay for an honest day's work, right? I love that sound at meetings, man. It's the sound of families that shouldn't be together. I love the sound of babies and children in Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. Yeah. I'll just tell you a quickie, because that way I can postpone my inventory, something I always enjoy doing. A couple of months ago, a friend of mine named Bobby R., who was a Skid Row bum in Los Angeles, he came off Skid Row, became a functioning member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and eventually ran the LA Marathon through Skid Row. And he was inducted. We have a place down on our Skid Row called Harbor Lights. It's run by the Salvation Army, and it's a beautiful bottom to hit. The Salvation Army guy there says when he talks, he says, "You do not have to die to go to hell, just come here." And Bobby, several months ago, was inducted into something called the Hall of Miracles, where 33 members of Alcoholics Anonymous who came off Skid Row were inducted into the Hall of Miracles with 3 or more years of sobriety. And it hurts my heart that no news guys were there. The news guys don't go there. That's okay, because we know. Right? We know what's going on. We know the amount of good that's going on. We know the amount of lives that are being saved. All right? You see a lot of press on Skid Row, but you didn't see any of the press there to show 33 clean, presentable people. And that's what that Salvation Army guy said there. There was kids, bunches of kids. And he said, please don't be annoyed with the children, because this is the sound of a miracle. Families that should not be together. Yeah. Grandiose. Self-centered. And grandiose, you know what? What do I think? I mean, God got up that morning and said, let's keep Saturn on its axis and put Scott Redmond in a kitchen truck. What is that? What is that? Now, you hear in the program, and I know it's true for these people, the people who share it, and it works for them, that God's getting them parking spaces, taking parking spaces away, getting them into relationships, getting them... And I said, no, not the parking God, not the parking God. No, man. What do you do if you don't get a space? What do you do? So, and this is just for me, I had to get a God not involved with parking at all. I had to get a God big enough so a lot of stuff could happen in his world, and I didn't get to blame him. And my sponsor said that one of the most beautiful things anyone's ever said to me, he said, Scott, your God's not big enough to handle that now. Wait, my God's big enough. Use mine till yours gets bigger. I mean, and it's worked for me, and I've gotten to say that to many, many men, and it's an astounding thing. I'm jealous. I have low self-esteem. I'm impatient. Things aren't moving along. I'm playing God. Things are not going according to the Scott Redmond program, a fabulous program. That's the list I had to take to God in steps 6 and 7. I also had a resentment against the guy for what I don't know, for being hungry. I don't know what I resent. The guy was a sweet guy. He didn't rub it in. He was nice to me. He wasn't mean to me. And I had a resentment against God for putting me on the kitchen truck. And I worked my program. I did my job in Alcoholics Anonymous. And while I was on that job, I served people who had been my assistant directors, who had worked for me. I was serving one day, and here come these 2 actresses down the line. I got gravy. I'm working the gravy, and here they go. And I had directed them in a soap opera, and now I'm a spiritual Goliath, right? I've been working 10 steps. I'm happening, right? I'm going to have my humility moment, right? I'm fine. No, I'm fine. I'm with God. I'm a man of God. I have my gravy. I'm fine. I'm getting ready for them. Here they come. They don't recognize me. Hey, could you keep the gravy off my potatoes? Could you keep... Man, oh man. If you're new here, and you're a part of a certain class of people who experience a phenomenon of craving, who drink not because you want to, but because you have to. And if you want to read about it, please do read the doctor's opinion in our book. It's an incredible section of our book. It was written by a non-alcoholic. And in this section, this is a medical man. He says one of the most, something that has always struck me in my heart. He says, if you don't get it, he says, why would I do this? Why would I sponsor a spiritual, altruistic society that I don't make $1 on, right? Medicine is an industry. We all know that. And Silkworth in this section says, why would I do this? He He says, if you don't get it, come work with me. Hear the sound of a man who wants to get sober and who can't. See the destroyed wives. See the destroyed families. See the crushed children. And then he says something that hits me in my heart. He says, let it become part of your waking moments and your sleeping moments. He was dreaming about it. He was dreaming about people he couldn't help. He says, come do this and you won't ask me anymore. You won't ask me why I'm doing this. So if you're new here and you do have this physical reaction, if you're dreaming about drinking, okay? My mother has never had a dream about walking into a palace made of cocaine. Ever. I defy you to produce a normal human being who dreams about drinking. I defy you to produce a normal person who dreams about drinking Thunderbird wine and slamming dope. If you're dreaming about drinking and you're new, that doesn't mean you're going to drink. It means you could be an alcoholic. If you're not, I don't know what's wrong with you. If you have this physical reaction and it's mixed with a certain kind of thinking, and we've talked about it tonight, and if you really want to get into it, it's in steps, it's in the second and third chapters of our book. If you've been in drinking at exactly the wrong moment, if you build up a bright outlook for yourself and your family and rip it down around your ears in a senseless series of sprees, if you fail to recall with sufficient force the memory of the pain and humiliation of a day, a week, a second ago, and repeat the same insane behavior over and over and over again. Once this kind of thinking has become established in someone with alcoholic tendencies, with this physical reaction, one of the greatest pieces of alcoholic thinking I've ever heard was, again, at my old home group. A guy had been dragged out of his car, drunk. He was chained to a bench in the police station. He had just urinated on himself, and he looked up at this cop and said, I have got to stop driving. When the drink in your hand has no connection to the condition of your life, that is fatal alcoholic denial. And when this thinking is mixed with that physical reaction, it creates this kind of soul stew, this cancer of the soul, this soul sickness that once alcoholics are in the grip of it, they are a baffled lot. Their lives slip out between their fingers like a handful of water over and over and over again. And that is the condition I came to Alcoholics Anonymous in. And around the time in my sobriety that I am describing now, I started to understand it. I started to understand it on a very, very basic level. And if you got that physical and it's mixed with the mental, and then you get up to chapter 4 and you start reading about that soul sickness, and it says if you do this work, you can use this work in this book to draw closer to God, and He will reveal Himself to you. None of us can fully comprehend or define that power which is God, so don't even bother trying. Just look for Him. He will if we seek Him, you know? And it's an astounding thing. In the middle of that chapter, there's something I always try to remind the new guy of. It says in the middle of that chapter, it says, right after the discussion of is there a God, is there not a God? Well, on a starry night, we thought there was a God, but then we saw bad things happen, and then we said there wasn't a God. And then it says, you have no life. You can't have relationships. You can't make a living. You're useless. Could we just take this argument and lay it to the side for a few minutes? Okay? Could we just see about this other stuff? Let's just take care of this other stuff, and then we can do all the arguing and conversing you want to do. I kept doing this work with my sponsor and doing my job in Alcoholics Anonymous, and eventually on this job, I really started working for me. I really started learning how to show up and work on the catering truck and really be proud of my work. Both of the companies that I worked for asked me to go into business with them. I started showing up and giving them a dime for their nickel. And after doing it for a couple of years, I was offered a writing job from a company called Ketchum Public Relations in New York. And it was a hot job. It was a hot writing job. And I started obsessing on this job. My mind-reading skills kicked in. I started getting the brain fever. The vein came out right here. And I made a videotape for them that they wanted. I sent it off to them. I wanted this job. And the God shift started happening again. The ego came up again. And I crashed and burned before I even heard from him. Before I even heard from him, you see, once you are used to not being in resentment, and you get in resentment, you know you're toxic. It's as if your appendix is burst. You know when you know the difference, when you know what it's like to not be driven, it's an incredible thing. You know, and for me, I'll just tell you, for me, I do believe, and it has been true in my life, that pain has been a touchstone of spiritual growth, but joy has also. Many, many times joy has also, because I want more. And I have been willing to work my program and make changes based on joy, and not always pain each and every time. Although, certainly pain, but in addition, I like that. So I sat down and I did the 10th step, resentful at these people for not giving me the job. I had not heard about whether or not I had the job, right? And I did the 10th step and I surrendered it. And a little while later, I got a phone call, and it was from Ketchum Public Relations, and I had not gotten the job, and I was okay with it. Hung up the phone rang, and it was my catering company. They said, can you cater a commercial up in Lake Arrowhead, shooting a TV commercial up there. So I got into the truck, and I got up to Lake Arrowhead, which is up in the mountains, and I grabbed the call sheet. I found out who the commercial was for, and it was for Ketchum Public Relations. Now I'm feeding them. I'm feeding them now. And then a guy comes into the truck. Guy comes in the truck with a video camera, and I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Oh," and he's taping me cooking. I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Oh, we're taping the making of these commercials." So now they're taping my humiliation, and they're going to go back to New York and show them the tape, and the guys in New York are going to go, "Is that Scott Redmond with the meatloaf there? Oh, that poor son of a bitch. You know, if we had known, we would have given him something, you know." I called the sponsor. I said, "Yeah, we're getting a gift now, pal. Yeah, we're getting a gift now, baby, and the miracle has gotten bigger." Oh, man, I couldn't believe it. Don says to me on the phone, he says, "Well, Scott, I guess God had enough writers. He needed a few cooks today." Then he says to me, "Well, geez, you know, you told God you wanted to work for Ketchum. You just forgot to tell him what you wanted to do." He's a bad man. He's a bad, mean man. My first year of sobriety, I was online to buy lunch. I was on my way to work, and the guy in front of me was buying like a can of Colt 45 with, you know, loose change and lint and a half-eaten milk dud. You know the guy, right? Been there for like a week, you know. And he turned around and he looked at me, and instead of in my best Bronx saying, "What are you looking at?" I said, "How you doing?" He said, "You don't know how I'm doing. Nobody knows how I'm doing except for the people in Alcoholics Anonymous." I said, "Fine." We went outside and we talked. We exchanged numbers. And that night he called me. I called a guy with more time than me, and we picked him up and went on a 12-step call. We took him down to County General Hospital, County USC Hospital in L.A., and we would talk to some guys before we took him down to this particular facility, and we were told, don't go in with him. Dump him off at the door. Don't show them that he's got any friends or ways in me. Dump him and book. We went in there with him. We went all the way up to the alcoholic ward with the guy. About halfway through, he turns to us and he says, "I feel like I'm dying." And the guy I'm with says, "That's because you are." And I pulled him aside. I said, "What a terrible thing to say to this guy. What a cold, terrible, insensitive thing to say to this guy." Now, the guy is in a county facility. He's been told to lie that he's got blood in his urine to break his way into the alcoholic ward. Well, what's the guy supposed to say? "You're just having a bad day. You're having a bad day." No, this isn't a bad day. This is what dying feels like. I'll let you know when you're having a bad day. You're in no danger of having a bad day. You're dying. If you stick around here for any appreciable amount of time, you will see men and women walk into this fellowship with bottoms that will make your hair stand on end. You will look at that man or woman and you will say, "He can never drink again." Not with what he's been through. He can't do it. He'll never drink again. And after a period of time of not treating their alcoholism, it will not be their bottom anymore. It will be a bad day, a period of time where people were thinking behind their back, were being particularly mean to them, were getting a bad series of breaks, and they will share their way right out of the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous and move on with the business of dying. And it is blood-chilling. It never ceases to hit me in my heart, and I hope it never does. Better you than me, fine, but that doesn't mean I don't care. The guys who I sponsor who are dead today, when I told them I loved them, I meant it. I miss them. My children misses them. My wife misses them. They were good guys. Sometime after this, a guy who I was sponsoring called me up and said, "Look, Scott, take the steps and, take a hike. Leave me alone, man. Stop sharing all this crap with me. And if you can work it into your schedule, die. And leave me alone, man." And he proceeded to rip some people off in a program. He stole some money, he ripped off an apartment, he stole a car. He was making me look pretty bad. And I wanted to sit down and explain a few things to him. My sponsor said, "Nah, I don't think so. You've been telling people where they stand in the universe your whole life. Why don't you sit down and do a little inventory work?" And I did. I sat down and I wrote, "I am resentful at blank for ripping people off in Alcoholics Anonymous and making me look bad. It affects my self-esteem, pocketbook ambition, personal relations, and sex. Another 5-bagger for sure." Now, what's the list? What's the list? I'm self-centered. I care more about how this is affecting me than him. I'm not hurt. It's him, not me. I'm a people pleaser. I care more about how people think of me in AA than what this guy's going through. I'm spiritually prideful. That's a new one. Didn't get that till I became a spiritual Goliath in Alcoholics Anonymous. Right? How dare this man comport himself thusly after coming into contact with a man of my spiritual caliber? Unbelievable. And I'm unwilling to accept the fact that another child of God could be spiritually sick like me. It says in our book, if I am resentful at a spiritually sick person, if I'm not showing the same tolerance, pity, and patience I would cheerfully grant a sick friend, how can I be mad at a sick person? So clearly, if I am resentful at someone who's spiritually sick, one of my defects is an unwillingness to accept his spiritual sickness. And self-pity. No, don't fight me. Self-pity. What a drug self-pity is, huh? You bottle that, you knock crack right off the market. Overnight. What a powerful drug self-pity is. What a blinder that is. And a hypocrite because I had certainly done everything this man had done. Sometime after this, this man found out he had a fatal illness, and he had called the city agency, and they said, all we can do is take you down to County General and dump you off at the door. I knew that that wasn't true because I had done my job in Alcoholics Anonymous. He couldn't call anybody else because he had burnt out, I guess, the other people around him, and maybe some of them had told him what they thought of him. I hadn't because I had done my job in Alcoholics Anonymous, and he called me, and I got to be there for another man during his death when I couldn't be there for my father. And my father came back into my life. And I could feel his presence again, and I could tell his grandsons about him, and I could tell the funny stuff about him. And that horrible, cold place was gone. And I had him back in my life, and I have him back in my life. And I know how proud he would be of his son, Scott Redmond, the alcoholic. And the only reason that it happened for me is because I did my job in Alcoholics Anonymous. Nancy started going to Milton and Ruby's house, and we started seeing how a sober family functioned. A lot of people over there, a lot of laughing. I couldn't even engage. I really couldn't even cross the line and get into it. But I used to look at these people, and I used to look at their daughters, and I used to say, not us. It's beautiful, and great stuff is happening for us, but not that. The kids are too sick. Nancy and I are too crushed up. That's just not available to us. On January 17th at 4:31 a.m., I thought we were going to die. My wife and I and our 2 sons stood in a hallway, and every cabinet in our house, all the food in the refrigerator emptied out of the room. The entire house started shaking to pieces. It looked like our books were piling up in a place where they were going to burst into fire. And I thought we were going to die. I said a prayer. The prayer was, "Holy shit." I didn't get spiritual until later that afternoon. But I did think I was going to die, and I thought my wife and our sons were. We waited a couple of hours, and daylight came, and then we all put our clothes on, and we walked a couple of blocks away where one of the men I sponsor lives, and he and his wife have a 5-month-old baby. Their place was destroyed, and we told them they'd be staying with us. Not because it was our idea, not because we're nice people. And then we left them and we went to my sponsor's house. He had just finished doing CPR on a guy who died in his arms, who was electrocuted. His place was destroyed. We came back to our place, and it started. It started. When Micah was born, 15 years ago in New York, we were surrounded by friends and family and flowers. 2 years and 9 months later, when Jesse was born in Los Angeles, we were all alone in the hospital. No one was there. On January 17th, it started happening. The phone calls started. People started coming over. The house started filling up. People started cooking for each other. We made the phone calls. 20 guys showed up to move my sponsor. 20 more guys showed up to move other people. The AA family kicked in. This is what I dreamed of my entire life. This is all I ever wanted. All I ever wanted, and I could never even tell you that I wanted it. You know, on this one street, one of the men I sponsor, this locust of drunks descends on this apartment. You know, and the other people there are doing their deal. You know, they're alone, and this woman goes, "How do you get them?" I said, "Well, you got to almost die. You know, vomit a lot, and we'll come over." There was a woman there who was wife of one of the men I sponsor, and she really hasn't been getting involved in the program. She's been watching it, and she got to see the demonstration of the power of God as exhibited in Alcoholics Anonymous that morning, and she couldn't believe it. And I pulled her aside and I said, "Do you remember you were at a baby shower at our house a couple of months ago?" And it was for a man I sponsor and his wife. They're both from other countries. They have no family here, and we threw a baby shower. 40 members of Alcoholics Anonymous and Al-Anon showed up, dressed beautifully, there to meet their neighbors and become part of, with beautifully wrapped gifts. I said, "You were at that event?" She said, "Yeah." I said, "Do you understand that no one there knew them? Do you understand that only out of the 40 people, only 5 people there knew them?" And she went, "What?" I said, "That's it. That's what's happening here." You know, she looked at me and she said, they're not even screwing around. I said, "No, they've already screwed around. They've covered that." What's happened in our family is a pretty remarkable thing. Nancy and I no longer work on our relationship. My idea of working on a relationship is to talk to you until you change your mind. Until your eyes roll back in your head and you keel over, and on the way down you go, "Okay." We try to work on ourselves and bring a better person to the deal, you know? And the sexual relationship, the sexual inventory that's described in our book has become my template for my trying to work out my stuff in the relationship. And not just sex, just for the relationship. It says in our book, "Where have I been selfish, dishonest, and inconsiderate? Where have I unjustifiably aroused jealousy, suspicion, and bitterness? And what should I do instead? Where have I been selfish? I want what I want when I want it. Where have I been dishonest? Well, I might do housework, and you might think that's because I want a clean house. But no, I think on the back of cleaning products there should be a conversion table of housework to sex. Right? A certain amount of housework should equal a certain amount of sex for a certain duration of time. So I'm lying to you. I'm lying to you by cleaning the house. Because I'm not doing it just because, God forbid I should clean a house to live in a clean house. No. Selfish, dishonest, inconsiderate, I don't much care how you feel about it. Where have I unjustifiably aroused jealousy? Well, I might just look at somebody in a way that's going to be hurtful to you because you haven't done it my way. Suspicion? I might just close that door and not be forthcoming with my feelings just to keep you on your toes. And bitterness, just roll to that other side of the bed and just keep you away. Again, as a punishment and as a way to bully. What should I do instead? Well, there's a million things. And by writing these inventories and then saying, Father, please take this away. What can I do for you? The biggest question I've ever asked in Alcoholics Anonymous, what can I do for you? Otherwise, I got God running all over town doing stuff for me, right? What's the action? What's the demonstration? What can I do to exhibit my faith that's going to let God in? What can I do for you? What should I do instead? Well, why don't you tell your wife how you feel without telling her what to do? What the hell is that all about? How about overcoming a fear of confrontation and telling somebody how you feel without playing God with them? What is that? What the hell is that all about? Well, I became willing over a period of time to start doing that. Our two sons are remarkable, just remarkable children. Before I forget, I just do want to tell you how terrified Nancy is of me today. A couple of months ago, Nan said to me, you got to take Mike to the dentist. And that's our older son. And I said, I have to take him? Where will you be? She said, where will I be? I'll be dancing around the house naked, screaming, I'm not taking him, I'm not taking him. Okay? Man. My boys have found an entire class of adults who's terrified of them, and that's the new men who come to my house. Some years ago, I brought a new guy over, and Jesse was about 8 at the time, and Jesse walked up to him and said, what step you working, pal? The guy said, 4, I'm here to do 4. I said, he's 8 years old, man, for Christ. I mean, I don't leave new guys alone in the room, and I come back in, and the boys are like, it's ugly. Last year, this guy came over to do a 5th step on Wednesday, and he had to come back Thursday to finish it. And Jesse is doing his homework without looking up. The guy walks in and Jesse goes, what's the matter, dude? Blew it last night? Got to do it again? Oh, man. My older son, who I told you was so grievously ill and was physically sick from alcoholism, so terrified. Some years ago, I was making the boys lunch, and I said to Michael, what do you want on your hot dog? He said, I want mustard, onions, and lettuce. I said, lettuce? He said, okay, I don't want lettuce. He walked away, came back about 45 minutes later, and he looked at me directly in the eyes, and I'm not altering one syllable. He said, I will never again allow your opinion of what I want affect what I ask for. So I asked him to sponsor me at that point. Man. What's that? What is that? A couple of months ago, Mike and he did something really dangerous with his brother. I got real mad and I chewed him out. Got right up in his face and chewed him out. And he walked away and he slammed the door of his room. And I went in, and I went like this, and he went, hold it. I didn't tell you were wrong, but a big guy just got up in my face and screamed at me. Don't you think anybody'd be mad about that? I didn't tell you weren't wrong. Don't tell me I can't be mad. What's that? What is that? I'll tell you what it is. What does it have to do with sobriety? Everything. It has everything to do with sobriety. Some months ago, my son came home after his first drug experiments. And my wife and I had to deal with the terror and fear and heartbreak of dealing with an adolescent who was starting to get involved with drugs. I don't know if he's an alcoholic. If he is, I know a lot of men who would love to sponsor him. But we called Milton and Ruby. We called all these other people that we know in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous who have been through losing their children to alcoholism, through the pains of seeing children find out they weren't alcoholics, were alcoholics, were not alcoholics. Exactly what happened to us on the morning of January 17th at 40:31 a.m. Exactly that thing happened to us around our son's drug use. Alcoholics Anonymous. The locust, right? The sober locust. It's really... If you're new here, I want to welcome you to Alcoholics Anonymous. I want to suggest that you stick around long enough to get a diagnosis. I want to suggest that you've been using your treatment for alcoholism, and it's a colossal failure. I was talking to a new guy on the phone. Nancy walked through our room, and all she heard, I'm talking on the phone to the guy, and this is all she hears. Okay, let's say the aliens are coming. That's an outside interest. I'm not arguing about that. I got one question, pal. Why are they coming for you? Why are they coming for you? Why have they traversed an entire universe for you? The guy's new. He's 11 days sober. He's sleeping with a Bible on his forehead. So the aliens are going to go across an entire galaxy, walk in there and go, oh no, the Bible, and fly back. Why are they coming for you? If you're new here, this is the only book that is text on recovery from a fatal illness that contains the sentence, we absolutely insist on enjoying life. There's no book about cholera that says, cholera is a hoot. It's a scream. You'll love cholera. You'll meet other people with cholera. You'll have a fabulous time with them. Then you'll meet people who just caught cholera. It doesn't get any better than that. If you're new here and the aliens are coming for you, welcome to Alcoholics Anonymous. Welcome home. Thanks for having me down tonight.